your biggest competitor is not another property manager. It's self-management. And so that 1,000 to 5,000 stage is really where you define like why property management is actually better than self-management, and deliver a product and service in the market that is able to convert those self-managers into, professional property management clients.
Welcome to Unfiltered, the official podcast of PropertyManager.com. I am your host, Dylan Scroggins. Riding solo today. Don't have my typical co-host, Mr. Matt Spear, but I have a very special guest, Mr. Chuck Hattemer. Chuck, how you doing?
Doing excellent, Dylan. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Tell me, just give us a little background on just what you've been up to in property management, really the last 10 years, and just how you entered this space.
Yeah, well, I really got into property management in 2014 as a co-founder of a company called Poplar Homes. And that was a technology and service company doing full service property management. Started out as purely sort of a software leasing platform, quickly expanded in 2015 to full service property management. And we grew that from the San Francisco Bay Area to the top 40 markets. So really going from zero to, at our largest scale, 15,000 doors under management, largely single family rentals, working with retail investors or small multifamily investors. And I went through the whole 0 to 1 experience, really from knocking on doors, talking to landlords, going and cleaning the bathrooms of houses, fixing up walls and floors, and building our first sales team out of a garage and just starting to scale the business. And then we ended up raising venture capital money and bringing on an incredible group of investors, including some early Google investors like Jeff Dean, who's the chief of AI at Google, the inventor of the Google search algorithm, and some other early Google investors. And then, we scaled that across the country. And we ultimately, at the end of 2024, sold that business to Evernest. And I joined Evernest to integrate the sales and marketing team. So have seen it all in property management, have worn the hat of maintenance coordinator, leasing agent, financial modeler, and fundraiser, and, sales and marketing. So ultimately focused a lot on the sales and marketing piece of the business. And then, really was excited about the intersection of like technology, property management, and people, and how you could bring technology into an industry to create more transparency and trust, and, align the interest of the client and the property management company. So that's the quick, maybe not so quick background on myself.
No, that was perfect. And at its peak, before it sold to Evernest, how many doors were under management at Poplar?
We had about 15,000 doors under management.
And you were a part of the team from 0 to 15,000.
That's right. Yeah. So we scaled organically for the first 5,000 doors or so. And then we did some acquisitions of about 20 different companies to do a little inorganic growth to go from 5,000 to 15,000.
We have a lot of different listeners to the pod, people trying to go from 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 5,000, 5,000 to 15. You've seen it all. So this is going to be a fun episode. We're going to dive deep into a lot of different factors in that. But backing up during that experience, how would you divide the stages of growth? Would you say, hey, 500 to 1,000, like 1,000 to 5,000, like how would you divide stages of growth? I think that's a big challenge right now because people don't know what stage they're in. So walk me through just the evolution of a PM group going from 0 to 15,000. How would you divide those segments?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think for every business owner and operator, it really is dependent on your motivations for your business, what kind of business you ultimately want to build and grow. And so, when we first got started, we we did have the vision of, hey, we want to build a brand that can scale, business that can scale to many different markets. We always had this sort of dream of one click, property management, where anyone anywhere with a rental property could kind of hand off their property to a professional property management company and earn the passive income and actually make it passive, but still know everything that's going on with that property. So I say that because you know, I think if you're a business owner who's focused on going deep in your market, the stages might look different. But I think regardless, the 0 to 100 stage is that first stage where it's really hands on. You're meeting every single client face to face. You're visiting every single property in person. You are getting to know the ins and outs of each door that you manage, because that's where you really understand what is your superpower that will make the customer experience unique to your brand and stand out in the market. And that 0 to 100 stage is really about defining your product market fit and your unique brand. Then you get from like the 100 to 500 stage, and that's where maybe you can't meet every customer in person, and you start to really focus on what are the early stages of process that we put into place where I can find great people to join the team, give them some great process to work with, and you can take what worked really well for you in the 0 to 100 stage and hand that off to one or two other people when it comes to the day-to-day operations. And then that'll allow you to focus for the 500 to 1000 stage. And, I think once you reach that kind of 500 doors in one market stage, that's where you really start to develop strong brand reputation and significance in the market. And if you can go from 500 to 1000 still within that market, you're going to solidify yourself as the top operator. And, but you can also choose at that 500 stage, you sort of have a choice. Do I branch out to new markets? Do I just keep going deep on this one market? And it depends on the size of the city and metro area that you're in. But that 500, 1000 stage is next. And then you go from, I think 1000 to 5000 is where now you're building teams, not just a couple people that are reliable partners with you, but really a team that can scale processes and be able to execute those processes on their own while you focus on the overall business strategy and vision. 1000 to 5000, as you enter that stage, you're starting to surpass the vast majority of property managers. There's some like 80,000 property managers in the US. I love the stat. It has the same business concentration as nail salons. There's one on every corner, and the average size is probably about 250 doors under management. So when you're in that, 1000 to 5000 stage, all eyes are going to be on you as an operator and how you do things. And you sort of have the responsibility to operate in a way that lifts up the whole industry and the profile of property management. Because the bottom line is 60% of American retail landlords manage their own property. Your biggest competitor is not another property manager. It's self-management. And so that 1000 to 5000 stage is really where you define like why property management is actually better than self-management, and deliver a product and service in the market that is able to convert those self-managers into, professional property management clients. Once you hit 5000, I think 5 to 10,000 is kind of the final stage of growth. I think that stage largely is going to be driven by inorganic growth for a lot of companies. But yeah, that's the final stage. And that's really where you're going multi-state, multi-region, and you're trying to, replicate what worked well in your early markets. So those would be the stages, I would say.
Something interesting you mentioned, You've worked alongside, I mean, you even mentioned Google, but also Poplar, Everness, these one word Brazilian soccer player type royalty and property management. You've worked with some of the best and helped build some of the best. We think of those as brands in this space, but you mentioned the word brand much earlier in the stages than I thought you would. I thought you mentioned brand at the $1,000 mark, if that's when you'd invest in your brand, but you mentioned it at the 100 to 500 mark. So walk us through the role of brand for these PM groups, because you can Google PM in your area and you can see looks like logos and brands from the early 2000s, late 90s. Once again, you mentioned that a lot early in the process. So walk us through specifically a Poplar, but just in general, how important is it to have a good brand in property management? And also, what are some things people can do to invest in that?
Yeah. Brand is critical even from an early stage because your brand will be how people think of you. Those early customers will be, stewards of your brand in the industry among other real estate investors, early adopters, and those are the folks that you want shouting from the rooftop. So that's why I mentioned it's so critical in those early days. And, I think what brand really means is not just what your logo looks like, what your website looks like, but how do people feel about your business? Like what are they when they walk away from an interaction with your company? What are the descriptive words they're using to describe, that experience? And, I think investing in that brand early, the 0 to 100 stage and the 100 to 500 stage, I mean, really at all stages, you should be talking to your customers constantly, like regularly scheduling customer calls, meetups to understand, the pains, the motivations of your customers. But brand, investing in that brand is doing that sort of research, having those conversations with your customers, find out what their pain points are, and build your customer experience in a way that resolves that pain and delivers the magical moments that are kind of unexpected magical moments that, are different from what a client might get if they were doing property management on their own or if they were working with another property management client. So I think that's really key. And then obviously a really professional presentation is a great starting point for that brand. So I see all the time, I think, property management companies, they're so focused on the business operations and day to day, which you should be. And that's where your brand, the foundation of your brand is built. But once you reach that stage where you figured out sort of what that customer experience is like, you need to take that and present it in a way to people that resonates with them, that makes them feel good. And that means, having a professional website, having consistent information across the internet about your company, responding to all the reviews and complaints in a timely manner, making sure that you're, updating your service based off of that feedback, having professional photography. That's one thing that is a great first interaction with your brand is your listings, because both tenants and property owners are going to look at your listings, and having a really excellent professional photography for all your properties, professional photography of yourself as a business owner, making sure you're telling your story on whether it be on your own website or through other channels like a podcast or through social media, and, taking people along for the ride is a really important part about for building your brand. People want to celebrate hardworking, thoughtful business leaders and companies, and you might as well open the door a little bit into what's happening in the background of your business so that people can see that and feel that with your brand.
Mm. We talk about that a lot on the recruiting side, because when you have a really clean website, even a small LinkedIn presence is more than most. So telling that story and bringing in people who might not have ever considered a career in property management, that brand, you can leverage it in so many ways. So yeah, it's fascinating. I like what you said there about it's all about feel. It's not just about getting a new logo. Anybody can go on Canva and get one for $5 or less. but having that feel, you're right, that holistic brand is so important.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to kind of, speak out about what your belief system is in the way that you run your business. I think a lot of people in those early stages are hesitant to put themselves out there a little bit with some strong opinions or hot takes, but that will help reveal the audience that is going to work with you, that's going to trust you to run things the way that you know will run most successfully, and find the right kind of clients that you want to work with. And so, that was one of our learnings from early on in Poplar is we kind of started with saying yes to everyone. And then we quickly realized that in a business that has 10 businesses within it, it's very difficult to say yes to everyone. And you have to put a stick in the ground as to what, how you will run things and what your customer experience will be like. And, expect to say no to more people. But there's a silver lining in that the people that, you can say yes to are going to trust you to run things and be a little bit more, hands off because they line up with your beliefs. And don't be afraid to repeat yourself in those beliefs throughout the brand building process. It takes six touches to get an idea to stick with people at a minimum. So, repeat your core values, your vision, sprinkle that throughout all your content, your website, and customer interactions.
Shifting the conversation, we've looked backwards at your career and story in property management, but moving more towards the future, which is something we like to talk about a lot here on Unfiltered. Looking around the corner, I can't think of a better person to comment on sales, marketing, dare I say AI again, but that is a very, very, and understandably so, very hot topic right now in property management. Giving you a blank canvas here. What are some of the most pressing issues, concerns, excitement that you have for the industry right now when it comes to building a modern property management company?
Yeah, I'm remain really excited about the property management industry and business. And I think we have the opportunity with the evolution of technology to deliver on transparency and trust in ways that were not possible before because of, how much more sophisticated the technology is and how much easier it is to take what you're doing in your management business, packaging that for your customers and your residents, and helping them understand more of what you're doing so that it builds trust and increases transparency. And so some real examples of that. I mean, I think in the next few years, property management will be more about it'll evolve into more of a data and prediction business, not just a coordination business. And so the winners of property management will be ones who can predict maintenance, who can optimize revenue and pricing, and personalize both the owner experience and resident experience with all of the data that you have as a management company. One of the things that got one of our first investors, the chief of AI at Google, interested in our business was the fact that this asset class, single family rentals, was largely offline. There's so much interesting data about a real asset that just sits offline and you never get access to. I'm talking about what materials are used to build single family rentals. What are the appliances? Like, what's the community around these homes and how is that community developing? And all of that data is stuff that property managers have a window into. And if with the right system set up and the right ways to capture that information, taking pictures of all the appliances, documenting the materials used to build these homes, you can then use that data to do things like predict maintenance and personalize the resident experience. When they move in, they get a feel for not just the home they're living in, but the community that around them. Things like that, I think are going to be key to the winners of property management. And I think with that transition and the transition of who owns these properties being largely digital natives who grew up with smartphones, with technology, that we will see an increase in the number of real estate investors who trust professional property managers to manage their assets and their portfolios. And it'll be less of a, agent business and more of a data prediction business. So,
Quick data question. So you said something. I was already planning to ask you something, but you mentioned this. Right now, putting you on the spot here, from a data perspective, let's say you're a 500 door PM company outside a mid metro, let's say San Antonio. What percentage of your investors or owners are boomer or millennial? We're not counting Gen Z. They're struggling to find one house. But right now, if you have that portfolio, what percentage is boomers? What percentage is millennials?
yeah. So, I mean, I think the majority is going to be an older demographic, baby boomer generation is going to be your profile of your clients. So I would say that's going to be, it's not going to be a huge majority because millennials are now aging into that era of being real estate investors. But I would say maybe, 60% are going to be baby boomers and 40% are going to be millennials, something like that. And, that at Poplar, we found it was always the majority were over, 40, 45. There was a concentration of owners that were in that 55 to 70 range. But, we also, because our brand was kind of technology first and tech savvy, it attracted a younger segment as well. And I think a lot of the millennial segment that is inheriting these properties and they are finding out about real estate as a passive income stream, they're super motivated to figure out how to automate, optimize, have everything fit into their digitally native world. And so that's where technology can really stand out for your business.
So one more question on technology. Let's say you are that 500 door group out of San Antonio and you want to be at 1,000 in 3 to 4 years. So pretty ambitious growth. What are some trends right now in technology? And you can go down the sales and marketing or ops path, whatever path you want to go. But what are some trends that you're seeing right now that if they don't get on them today, they are going to get left behind tomorrow when it pertains to growth?
Yeah. So, one of the biggest trends that's top of mind that everyone's probably hearing about is AI and AI search as it relates to growth. This is something where I've heard, a lot of the larger property management companies talking about a decrease in organic leads. People are spending more time using ChatGPT to find a business or Google AI. And so making sure your business is properly positioned in those channels. And that's obviously, this is partially relevant to propertymanagement.com, but that's what we're doing at pm.com is helping businesses get placed in top results for AI search when people are searching for property management businesses. And the way to do that is, again, it comes to transparency. What all these companies have realized that are building large language models or trying to reinvent Google search, people want verified, factual information and transparency about the businesses that they're working with. That's what consumers want. You can probably think of examples in your own life where you have opted to work with a company that gives you more information about what results they're going to deliver for you. So being comfortable sharing those results on your website and putting that information out into the world is going to help you show up more for AI search. So that means how fast can you lease properties? How fast can you resolve maintenance? The satisfaction of your customers? What do your customers love about you? And exposing that information. Another trend I would say from a growth perspective is really getting plugged into the network of referral sources, real estate agents, and different businesses that interact with your customer. A tough thing with property management that we learned at Poplar is that it's both a pro and con. It's a very sticky business. So a lot of times customers who sign up for new property management companies have either a vacancy or they just went through an eviction or some maintenance issue went terribly wrong or they just bought a new property. But in between all those sort of life cycle moments, they're not making a lot of decisions to change how they manage their property. So you have to build relationships with all the people who do interact with them between those stages, whether it be contractors or real estate agents or lenders, and and get to know what matters to those people and arm them with the right tools and resources to help shout your brand from the rooftop when they're interacting with your customer. So those are the two things I think AI search and building a extremely strong referral network that I've seen work for businesses like Poplar and Evernest.
Excellent. And we are the official podcast of propertymanagement.com. We surprisingly don't talk about propertymanagement.com that much. And there's a level of intentionality to that. We want to make sure that we're giving people a, scope of the market, even if they decide to not partner and get verified with propertymanagement.com. But I think we'd be remiss to not talk about your role at propertymanagement.com as president, and would love to hear from you. What got you excited about what was being built at propertymanagement.com for you to want to be a part of it? And also tell us about your role right now and the future you see at the end of 2025 and into 2026 with the business.
Yeah. I'm, propertymanagement.com. It's funny. I got introduced to propertymanagement.com from you, Dylan, this
It's a
wonderful
crazy
podcast
story.
host. Crazy story. So we actually, we were introduced and I had a call with you and you told me, hey, I got this crazy friend of mine who ended up with this propertymanagement.com domain and he's building the Carfax for property management. And why don't you talk to him? And that was,
Well, sorry to interrupt, but the funny part about that is we talked for like 25 minutes. And then right at the end, I was like, hey, man, this is out of left field, but I got to connect you to Matt. And you're right, man. I need to send Matt an invoice. This was a placement fee. So thanks for reminding me.
yeah, that's right. Don't let him get away with that. Although maybe you should let him get away with that. You send it to me. I'll make sure it gets to the right place.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was like, and when I heard that story that you shared about Matt just, doing things and finding a way to, secure that domain, and the fact that he had built a successful property management business and was, motivated by the power of technology in property management. Those things piqued my interest because there's not a lot of folks who are really thinking with a technology first perspective in management. And not to say that's not okay. I mean, you have to have a great operator's mindset too. That's one thing we learned when we thought a little bit too much tech focused at Poplar. You can't forget the operations because that's really the guiding light for tech. But that's how I found out about propertymanagement.com. And when I got on the phone with Matt, he started talking about building the trust layer in property management. And that was like, bells were going off for me because that was like, basically it was hearing him pitch what Poplar had set out to do right back to me. And that really got me excited because at Poplar, we started that business with the vision of, hey, property management does not have enough trust and transparency. And we think that technology can help us deliver more transparency to customers and make them more confident in their real estate investments. And that's what Matt was talking about for the property management industry as a whole, was how do we take all the kind of information about management companies and put it out there in a way that helps people build more trust with these companies and helps new trends such as AI search build more trust with property management companies. And so that got me really excited. One of the ideas that Matt and I really jived on early on was like, accessing or like trying to one of the most important metrics for a property management business to be successful is vacancy time and like days on market. That's something that most management companies track, but a lot of management companies have trouble getting that number down. And part of the reason for that is that it's really hard to set an accurate rent for a property that will get it to move quickly, but also satisfy the requirements of the homeowner. And so, one of the things we kind of talked about early on was this concept of how can we aggregate all the information about what properties rent for and use that to deliver better rent estimates for property management companies and for homeowners. And that was like an example of one of the things that we had started working on at Poplar, but never quite got there because we were so focused on 10 other businesses, maintenance, leasing, accounting. And this PM.com seemed like the right place with the right team and people to actually focus on that technology equation and that data equation. So yeah, that's what got me excited about the business.
Chuck, that sounds great. I agree. We got a great team in place. Tell us about the 2025 plans and then looking forward to 2026.
Yeah. So by the end of 2025 for propertymanagement.com, our goal is to give everyone a true match score for their business. And what a true match score is, this, score that basically taking all the information about your business and giving a score based off things like the reputation that you have, the performance that you've demonstrated, and your experience in the markets that you serve, and making sure that we have kind of a starting point for who are the top 100 property managers in the country. So end of this year, we are ranking the top 100 companies, and going into 2026, we're focused on how can we help you as a company shout your brand and reputation from the rooftops and use that as a tool, your true match company profile, use that as a tool to help you win more clients, retain your current clients, and get you showing up in the top of AI search results. So there's not a lot I can share about the 2026 plans yet, but that's sort of the general theme. And we're really excited about this first iteration and helping. Ultimately, our goal is to lift up the overall reputation of the industry, because right now the problem is like property managers have to rely on Google, Reddit, Yelp, BBB to help kind of demonstrate their reputation. But none of those businesses has a focus in property management, and they're riddled with problems that don't actually give an accurate representation of your business. Yelp filters out reviews from people who don't have Yelp accounts, and a lot of older, homeowners and baby boomer owners don't have Yelp accounts. So all their reviews get filtered out. On Google reviews, people can, pay for reviews or pay to remove reviews. On BBB, if you have to pay to play, like in order to get verified on BBB, you got to pay. On propertymanagement.com, everyone can get verified for free. And that's our first objective is you come and tell us about your company. We'll give you a score. We'll feed that into AI search and give you an alternative to all these other platforms that do not give an accurate representation of your business. So that's the first objective.
Well, I continue to be amazed every week about what the team is building. Really honored and grateful to play a small part in it. But yeah, every week, just honestly, my mind is blown about what you're doing and building, but also how in stream it feels like to where the market's headed. And it just feels like in a world where it's so hard to be ahead, it feels like propertymanager.com is 6 months to a year ahead of where everything's headed, especially in regards to AI search. So very excited to have you as a part of the team, especially in the role that you're in. And it really has been an honor, man. So to land the plane here, our lightning round, I got 3 questions that we ask all guests. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. But to kick us off, the first question, what is a tool or app that you think all property management owners should be using right now? It doesn't have to be a specific PM tool, but just in general, what's a tool they can't ignore?
Yeah. I think something like Loom or Tela, one of these like video recording tools that you can use to document your process and your vision for your company and show other people on your team what excellence looks like and how you operate and do certain workflows, or even just sharing more about your strategy and vision. Like, just be constantly recording yourself, documenting that stuff and sharing it with your team. That's great content. It's a great tool to build up your content library. And those are simply just like video recording tools. So that would be the Notion, or sorry, not Notion. It's Tela, or Loom is another option.
Yeah, I use Tela. It's like $15 a month. And the amount of time it saves making videos for my team, it's incredible. I'd honestly pay a lot more, but hope they don't hear this because they're going to charge me. All right. So, second question, what is a book or a podcast that you think all PM owners should be checking out to get better in order for their business to get better?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of a lot of the books that I heard about through Matthew Whitaker and Graham Robinson from Evernest. Some of those EOS books, Good to Great and Traction, I think are great books for learning how to set up a well-oiled and operating machine as a business. And it's especially good if you're in that 500 to 1,000 stage that we talked about for growth. But I think a lot of property management businesses like recommend those books or talk about those books. So what I would throw in is some biographies. I think I learn a lot from hearing other people's story. And there's a book called Am I Being Too Subtle by Sam Zell, who was, considered one of the greatest in real estate in Chicago, built a massive real estate business out of Chicago called Equity Residential. And you may be familiar. And so that book has a lot of great lessons in it, just from someone who's a hard driving, nothing will stop you kind of business operator. And yeah, that's a great one.
Love it. I think I downloaded that on Audible like a year ago, but I have not listened to it. So it's a good reminder. All right, last question. What is one word you would use to describe the property management industry right now?
One word to describe the property management industry, maybe integrated systems, teams, experiences. I think that's where the real growth is. You hear a lot of businesses opening up new revenue streams and creating this like holistic integrated experience. That's what can really build a strong brand in property management.
Love it. What a great word. Well, Chuck, thanks so much for joining us. I'm really excited about what you're building and the team is building at propertymanager.com. It's an honor to have you on the pod. And I think there's a way we can make you a repeat guest. I'll try to talk to some people and pull some strings, but we'll try to get you on again.
All right. You can have your people talk to my people.
Yeah, they're the same people, but yes. Awesome. Thanks, Chuck.
All right. Thanks, Dylan.